On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1975. We're going to be taking a look at America, and they're going to be performing I Need You. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So we're going to be jumping into this video. It is a short song and a short performance. I'm going to be leaving in the beginning where they're setting up because it gives you a good lay of the land as to how they're setting up for this live performance for TV. Let's get these guys up on screen and see how they get on.
Now, we're not sure of the procedure, whether we just keep going or we redo some that we don't like. Keep going.
We want to redo that song. Can we redo that one?
Just keep going.
We used to laugh, we used to cry, we used to bow our heads, then wonder why. And now you're gone, I guess I'll carry on and make the best of what you've left to me. Left to me, left to me. I need you like the flower needs the rain. You know I need you. Guess I'll start it all again. You know I need you like the winter needs the spring. You know I need you. I need you. And every day I laugh the hours away, just knowing you were thinking of me. And then it came that I was put to blame for every story told about me. About me, about me. I need you like the flower needs the rain. You know I need you. Guess I'll start it all again. You know I need you. I need you, I need you, like the winter needs the spring. You know I need you. Guess I'll start it all again. You know I need you. I need you. I need you.
And there we have it. This performance totally live, and I left in the beginning when they're setting up and just getting ready to play because it gives you an insight into how live it is. It's something that you rarely see nowadays, the band setting up, probably mostly because there's so much backing track performances going on, and just seeing a band just get straight into a song. And it's interesting as well because you can see Dan tuning the 12-string Dan Peak here, and then the track just starts up, and whether he was in tune, I think he did give a little nod to Jerry Beckley, who's playing piano here and providing the lead vocal. It's that top instrumental ability as well as vocal ability that allows them to get straight into a song and give a performance that is worthy of the record but live. And this is what great bands back in the 70s and the 80s and just back in the day, where they would get it down in the studio in a few takes, takes or even just one take, so that what you heard live was so similar to what you heard on the record. I know that over the years, the sound that America put out there did change, and it did get more produced and therefore had more instruments in there. And it got to the point where these guys, because they were so talented, they could change instruments mid-song. And we've got a great example of that here, because we have got keys and we've got two guitars, one 6-string, one 12-string. But having that ability to change, and Jerry could play guitar as well. So it meant that they could do so many things live, obviously when there were other instruments involved, production-wise, that they couldn't play or physically didn't have the numbers of them to play, then they'd get other people in. Let me just mention Dewey Bunnell as well on the acoustic, the 6-string, because we can't really hear the guitars too well in this performance. They're not necessarily that high in the mix, but one thing you can hear are those backing harmonies, and adding that second harmony in there, so consistent throughout the whole performance. Obviously, we've got the guys singing and playing at the same time, doubling the difficulty. We've also got this dynamic journey that we go on, and all the top bands will take you through this journey. It just so happens that with this performance, we get straight in there with the piano and vocal that comes in, but then we get a little bit of 12-string in the background. The 12-string is low in the mix, but you'll especially be able to hear the change in the second verse, because with the 12-string, we now change to arpeggios and picking through the chords, and it's almost that call and response between that lead vocal and the 12-string. So it always gives you something different when you change something in that second verse. During that second verse as well, the major change dynamically is going to be the drums coming in, because that will lift that second verse to a totally different dynamic level, but also it'll take you to a different place on that journey that you haven't seen before. The drummer is not coming in all guns blazing, it's just adding an extra instrument, but still at the same dynamic level as everything else. You can imagine if the drummer just came in all guns blazing, it would just be well too loud, and it would take the focus of the performance, which is not what you want to do, especially in this kind of song, because of the ballad nature of it, but also you want that vocal to be the focus, and this is why it just flows along. And we do get that vocal just sitting on top, because everyone in the band is just bringing it down to that level so that nothing's competing. Just got on the left of shot here, you can see Calvin Fuzzy Samuels on bass, because it's exactly the same rule that applies to every band member. So that bass has got to be so subtle, but it is. This is why the performance works so well, because he and Willie Leacox on drums are just keeping it at that level, not to overstep the mark dynamically, and that is always the makings of a great band. If you've got everybody on an instrument and they all just stay behind that line, and they know where that line is first of all. If you don't know dynamically where you should be, then you're probably going to have a problem with the live performances. You might think that there's no real need to do anything different or to change it up at all, because it's so short. It means that you only have to keep people's interest in the song for a lot less than you would do normally, and therefore you don't have to throw a lot in. But it's the exact opposite, and this is the thing with the big hits that were only 2 or 3 minutes in length. There was always so much crammed into that 2 or 3 minutes. It's the same here with this live performance, because we've got the piano and the vocal start, which I've already mentioned, with the 12-string strumming and the 6-string strumming as well. So then by the time we get to the chorus, obviously we've got the harmony vocals coming in and a fuller sound. Then we get into the second verse, the drums come in, but it's so well played dynamically that everything is still sitting in the same place. It's not a shock when the drums come in, but getting into that second verse, because there was strumming in the first verse, now there's picking in the second verse, and it's something that you probably wouldn't notice, especially when you're just listening to the song and enjoying it, but all these things that you can do just to change it up, to make it interesting. And it doesn't matter if a song is only 2 or 3 minutes, you still want to make a journey out of that 2 or 3 minutes. Another thing you might notice in that first chorus, we're in 4/4 timing, so it means that it's all straight ahead and you can tap your foot along to it and it's fine. But in that second chorus, we go to 4 bars of 4/4 timing, and then we just have a couple of bars of 3/4 timing, which means that if you want to tap your foot along to it, you've got to remember to only count to 3 2 times over before then getting back into the 4/4 time signature again. And it's just something that you can take into consideration if you feel like it's not quite flowing or something's happened and you didn't know what it was. It'll be that. Another thing that we have here is the way that Jerry delivers that vocal without any vibrato on there. He's hitting straight notes, and like I've said before, if you're going to be singing straight notes, it's now imperative to be on pitch, and Jerry of course is. It's even more important when you've got guys in the background who are going to be harmonizing with you, because they are relying on your straight note being dead on pitch, so then they can set up their notes exactly where they need to be on pitch. There's no wide vibrato in any of the vocals, so that accuracy is top notch, and it's hitting those notes right between the eyes throughout the whole performance. If any of them here were flat or sharp, because they're holding notes and it is such a huge part of the sound, it would sound so bad. It's probably the reason why you don't see a lot of cover bands doing America songs, because first of all you need 3 vocalists in the band, but then you have to nail these harmonies dead on pitch, and it is such a tall order. Getting into that delivery that Jerry has because of those straight notes and the talking quality that he has with this song, and the conversational quality to it as well, which is fundamental to the meaning of the song and the way it comes across as if he is having a conversation with another party and somebody that he does need. Having that quality to Jerry's voice means that you just connect to it even more, because it is a story that's being told, and a personal story. And having that ability as a vocalist to go to that place is a rare thing, because a lot of singers might rely on diaphragmatic support, and they'll take a breath and then they'll really lean into the sound, and there'll be lots of compression on the vocals, and it can sometimes make the voice feel not as connected emotionally to the lyrical content or the message of the song because of the vocal technique. Just getting into the band name, because as kids they were in England and in London, because they were the sons of Air Force base personnel stationed here in London. But when they got together and started playing, they didn't want people to think that they were British and that they were trying to pretend to be American. After they'd finished school, Dan Peake went back to the USA in order to pursue his education over there. He attended college, but it didn't work out, unfortunately. So a year later, he came back to the UK. They got back together, started playing gigs in and around London, and they got noticed by Ian Samwell, who was the writer of Cliff Richard's breakthrough hit, and that's called Move It, and that was with Jeff Dexter as well. Those names that I do mention on my Cliff Richard video, if you want to check that one out as well. So at the end of 1970, they managed to open up for Elton John and The Who, and after this, in 1971, they signed to Warner Brothers Records. This was the same year that they then recorded their debut album, and it was released in 1971. And it wasn't a massive hit straight off the bat. It was very popular in the Netherlands because that's where they had been gigging quite a lot. That was Ian Samwell who got them out there playing loads of shows in order to perfect their stagecraft and just perfect their live shows. So the album was released right at the end of 1971, and then going into 1972 they recorded a few more songs, and one of those was initially called Desert Song, but then they changed the name of it to A Horse with No Name, and it was really popular whenever they played it. So they put this on the album because the album hadn't been released yet in the USA. It was on there, the album was released in March, and it was a monster hit, and A Horse with No Name was a monster hit as well. This song was on there, I Need You, which got to number 9 in the charts. In 1972, they not only changed their management, but also changed record labels and went for a more full band sound with their album that they released in 1972, and that was called Homecoming, and that was a monster album. It sold over 1 million copies, and Ventura Highway was a single from that album, which was a top 10 hit. In 1973, they released Hat Trick, and that wasn't quite as popular as the previous album. Muskrat Love got to number 67 in the charts. They decided that rather than self-producing like they had the last two albums, they were going to get another producer involved with the next album, and they managed to secure the services of George Martin, the fifth Beatle. So the album that they worked on with George was Holiday, and that was released in 1974, and that was a very popular album, and two massive hits from that album were Tin Man and Lonely People as well, getting to 4 and 5 in the charts respectively. And if you're starting to see a theme with the album names, they were consciously choosing words that began with the letter H. In 1975, they released Hearts, and that had a monster #1 hit on there. That was Sister Golden Hair, and it was the same year that their greatest hits album was released, and that went platinum. In 1976, we had Hideaway, and this was one of those albums that had a lot more complexity in the arrangements and a lot more instrumentation going on. So in order to cope with that, with their live shows, they had to expand and get help from other instrumentalists. In 1977 is when they released Harbour, and that was the first album of theirs that didn't go either gold or platinum, so they had had such success up to that point. And this is when Dan left the band and went in his own direction as a solo artist and released his first album in 1978. But Jerry and Dewey continued on, and in 1979 they released their version of California Dreaming, and also in 1979 they released their album, and that was the first without Dan, and that was called Silent Letter. In 1980 they released Alibi, and in 1982 they released View from the Ground, and that was another massively successful album. You Can Do Magic was a single that got to number 8 in the charts. They also had a massive hit with Right Before Your Eyes, and in 1983 they released Your Move and followed that up with Perspective in 1984. And at this point they then worked on their live show and went on tour. There was always such demand for these guys live, and it wouldn't be until 1994, 10 years later, that they'd release their next studio album, and that was called Hourglass. In 1998, they released Human Nature, and in 2001, Janet Jackson sampled the riff from Ventura Highway for her song, which was called Someone to Call My Lover. In 2007 is when they released Here and Now, and that album gave them a resurgence in popularity. It went down really well, and then Back Pages was released in 2011. Unfortunately, that was the same year that Dan passed away. But Jerry and Dewey still kept going and are still going to this day. So you can head over to their website and check out their tour dates, because you can still catch America live in 2020. But it's great to have a look back at this performance in particular because of it being set up for TV and not in front of an audience. So it's not a normal performance you would see or have access to, but you can tell that these guys are so well rehearsed, so tight vocally as well. The guitars could have been higher in the mix, but when the vocals are this good, they can just take center stage, and you can just listen to those for the whole performance if you want to. Thank you guys for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!